Okay, so today we're diving into an absolutely incredible and frankly disturbing personal story. It's from an account written by a man named Hans Smidema, and it's titled My Life in the Shadow of a Lie. In this explainer, we're just going to walk through the shocking claims he makes, basically in his own words. The author kicks things off with this staggering claim. He frames his entire life as a monstrous, decades long lie. This one sentence just sets the stage for a story about an alleged conspiracy that spans nearly 50 years. It's about his personal quest to find a truth he believes was literally stolen from him. So, to really get a grip on his story, we're going to follow the timeline that he lays out. We'll start with the moment he says his world just completely shattered, then move back to a past he claims was wiped by amnesia, and then into his ongoing fight for, well, for what he calls reality itself. All right, let's get into part one, the inciting incident. According to him, his life didn't just unravel slowly over time. Nope. He says it shattered, all at once in a single moment that kicked off this decades-long battle. He claims that back in March of 2000, when he was 52 years old, he was suddenly just slammed by this flood of incredibly vivid, detailed memories of a past he didn't even know he had. We're not talking about déjà vu here. He describes it as a complete, alternate history of his own life popping into his head, suggesting everything he thought he knew was just a fabrication. In his own words, this was the start of a lonely, maddening battle, not just for the truth, but for his own sanity. He alleges he was completely alone, fighting against everyone he was supposed to trust, his family, his doctors, even the Dutch state, who he claims were all working together to label him as delusional just to protect some dark secret. So, you've got to be asking, what was this secret he claims everyone was protecting? Well, part two of his account gets into what he calls the buried past. He tries to piece together the beginnings of this alleged conspiracy from a time when he claims his memories were totally suppressed by a profound, even conditioned amnesia. So then he lays out this timeline of what he alleges are the foundational events of the whole conspiracy. He points to this traumatic incident in 1972 where he claims he was forcibly sterilized. Then, his own marriage certificate in '73 being secretly co-signed by justice officials. Even a state-paid guardian moving in right next door. These are all pieces of a puzzle he says he was totally unaware of at the time. Now, at the very heart of his account is this deeply, deeply painful allegation about his children. He claims that they weren't biologically his and that this fact was hidden from him for decades. What's more, he alleges that one of the perpetrators later confessed all of this to him directly. So this brings us to part three, the fight for reality. After his memories supposedly came flooding back, Smidema describes this period of awakening where his life just turned into this agonizing battle against what he calls systemic denial. He claims that when he first tried to report these alleged crimes back in 2000, he wasn't met with disbelief. He was met with a coordinated, systematic effort to discredit him as delusional. So in response, he started documenting everything, every single interaction, building his case piece by agonizing piece. And this leads to a term the author uses to really define his experience: institutional gaslighting. He's arguing this wasn't just some personal manipulation. No, he says it was a systematic campaign by state institutions to deny things that could be verified, all to make him question his own sanity. A key battleground in this fight over reality, according to his account, was a DNA test. Smidema alleges that, a paternity test was agreed upon, but that the DNA swabs were deliberately swapped. He then claims those faked results were used as the official proof that he was delusional, which just cemented the entire narrative against him. His account then gets into an alleged attempt by the state to just end the matter, to shut it all down, moving from psychological pressure to a straight-up financial offer. And that brings us to this number: 5 million euros. Smidema makes this extraordinary claim that in 2004, the Dutch government offered him 5 million euros. And he's adamant. It wasn't a settlement, it was a bribe. A bribe to buy his silence with an NDA. An offer he says he flat out refused. Okay, in part four, the story goes global. Smidema claims that after hitting a brick wall at every single level in the Netherlands, he had no choice but to take his search for justice to the international stage, just hoping for a fair hearing somewhere beyond his home country's influence. He describes what happened at the European Court of Human Rights as a Kafkaesque trap. It's just wild. The court rejected his case because he hadn't used up all his legal options in the Netherlands, but he claims the Dutch Ministry of Justice had explicitly forbidden the police from even creating an official report of his complaint, which is, the first step for any domestic legal option. But then, in what is just a stark contrast to his experience in Europe, he claims U.S. authorities took his story very, very seriously. According to his account, an investigation that involved the FBI and the CIA led a U.S. immigration judge to not only confirm his children weren't biologically his, but also to grant him asylum on 5 separate grounds. He then claims this whole thing culminated in something you almost never hear of, an official torture complaint filed by the United States against the Netherlands on his behalf. And finally, in Part 5, the account really turns to the immense personal cost of this fight. He doesn't describe it as a legal battle, he calls it a never-ending war that he believes was designed to completely annihilate him as a person.
He then identifies a very specific network of people he holds responsible, calling it a web of betrayal. In his account, he alleges these very specific roles for each person, claiming a top justice official masterminded the whole cover-up, and even that his own brother led the effort to isolate him inside his own family.
And to describe the psychological toll of all this, Smittema uses some very specific clinical terms. He claims to suffer from CPTSD, and, most pointedly, this concept of betrayal trauma, which is when the harm comes from the very people and institutions that were supposed to be protecting you. The tangible costs, as he lists them, have been just catastrophic. He details complete financial ruin, a total of 29 months spent in detention in both America and the Netherlands, being forced into exile, and, of course, the ultimate breakdown of his marriage. He concludes the goal was never just to hide a crime, but to completely destroy his life. But he stresses that his fight has never been about money, and he points to his refusal of that €5 million offer as proof. He states his only goal, his singular goal, is the public acknowledgement of the truth and the restoration of a reality that he claims was stolen from him. And so the author frames his entire 24-year struggle within this final provocative question. He argues that under international law, the Netherlands has a binding obligation to investigate his allegations. His account is presented as evidence of their failure to do so, leaving him, in his own words, to live his life in the shadow of a lie.